Before I start, I might just have a quick prayer, if that's okay. Let's just bow our heads. Heavenly Father, I pray, Lord, for your presence here this morning. I pray, Father, that you be with me as I speak to the congregation, your children. I pray, Father, what I speak will be in tune with what you expect of me. And I pray, Father, that a special blessing is put upon them and that your name is uplifted. In your precious name I pray. Amen. Oh. There we go. Oh, there we go. Okay, excellent. Okay, so my title of my sermon this morning is A Prophet for Profit. You might think, what's that all about? Well, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the story of Balaam. Now, Balaam was a prophet for profit. Now, we'll get into that. But before we do, I just want to quickly just give a little summary of the children of Israel as they were exiting Egypt. Now, the story of the children of Israel, is a really good one, an amazing one, you'd say. Okay, and they were blessed people, weren't they? They were a blessed people because God was with them, and particularly around the time when Moses came on the scene, right? Okay, maybe not so blessed before that because they were in bondage, weren't they? In slavery. It wasn't so much fun. But when Moses came on the scene, God was doing some amazing miracles. The obvious ones, I suppose, we could talk about. The 10 plagues. The plagues were happening all around on top of the Egyptians, but nothing affected the Israelites. Pretty amazing. The parting of the Red Sea. That's a beauty. I would love to have been to that one, eh? Imagine that. The sea just opening up and just walking through. That's an awesome miracle. The manna falling down from heaven. The children of Israel were hungry, and God provided manna, food from heaven, literally. Amazing miracle. You know, when I first read that story, I thought, wow, this is really cool. But at the same time, as I was reading that story, I thought, man, these Israelites are a pain. So disobedient, always grumbling, complaining. Oh, why did you take us into this desert? We would have been better off in Egypt where we had plenty of food. And of course, idolatry. Who can forget the idolatry? When they made that golden calf. All at the same time, God was talking to Moses up on Mount Sinai. And Moses was in preparation to come down with God's law, written with his own finger. Disappointing. Disappointing for God and for Moses. And then there's the story of when they're at the borders of the promised land. They were right there, ready to enter. And what did they do? They sent out 12 spies. And they spied out the land for 40 days. And after 40 days, the 12 spies came back, and 10 had a negative report. And 2, Joshua and Caleb, they had a positive report. What did they say? They said, the land is indeed filled with milk and honey. Look at these grapes that we have here, the pomegranates. It's amazing. Quick, let's go in there and take that land. God is with us. Sounds like a good plan. The 10, though, they said, whoa, Jacob, Joshua, not Jacob, Caleb, Joshua. Aren't you forgetting something? What about the giants? We can't fight against those giants. There's no way we can defeat these people. Don't do it. We can't do it. And they persuaded the children of Israel not to go. And in so doing, they were cursed. They cursed themselves, you could say. Let's read about that. Make sure this is working. Not working, Jared? What have I forgotten to do? It's on. Anyway, I'll just read it from my script here, if you can sort it out. So, Numbers 14, 30 to 34. I'm just going to read that for you. Hopefully, there we go. It's up there. Except for Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, and Joshua the son of Nun, you shall by no means enter the land which I swore I would make you dwell in. But your little ones, whom you said would be victims, I will bring in. And they shall know the land which you have despised. But as for you, your carcasses shall fall in the wilderness. Okay. And your sons shall be shepherds in the wilderness 40 years and bear the brunt of your infidelity until your carcasses are consumed in the wilderness according to the number of the days in which you spied out the land. 40 days for each day you shall bear your guilt, 1 year, namely 40 years, and you shall know my rejection. So God rejected them, just as they rejected God. So for 40 years, they had to wander in the desert until that first generation died. And then the next generation, that's who was going to enjoy the promised land. But the road to the land filled with milk and honey wasn't an easy one. And it wasn't without trials. You know, the children of Israel were guilty of many things. And right throughout their history and beyond the promised land, they were guilty of many things. But the one thing that I think would have saddened God the most, I think would have been idolatry. Many things would have saddened God, but I think that one would have saddened him the most. That's just my personal view. So what is idolatry? What is the definition of idolatry? Well, Webster explains it this way. Idolatry is the worship of idols or excessive devotion to or reverence for some person or thing. An idol is anything that replaces the one true God. The most prevalent form of idolatry in Bible times was the worship of images that were thought to embody the various pagan deities. That sums it up pretty well. You know, there are stacks. There are stacks of incidences in the Old Testament that we could talk about. But the one story that I want to talk about this morning, as I alluded to already, is one about Balaam and Balak. Because the story there talks about some idolatry that happened that we can probably appreciate in our own lives. Okay, now if you remember the story, you remember that the Israelites were camped again. This is the second generation now, camped on the borders of the Jordan, of the Promised Land by the Jordan River, in preparation to enter the land and take it. Okay, and it's important to note that leading up to that point, they defeated a number of nations. Okay, a lot of nations around there fell because they've been true to God. God was with them. And King Balak, who was the king of Moab, he heard all this, and you could see he wasn't silly. He knew what was coming his way. He knew that the Israelites were going to march onto their land and then take over, and he was worried about that. So he had to come up with a plan. What was that plan? He got with the Midianites, spoke to the Midianites and said, listen, this is what's happening here. These Jewish people, these Israelites, they've taken over all this land, and we're next. We need to do something. So what did they do? Okay. Numbers 22, 5 and 6. Then he sent messengers to Balaam, the son of Beor of Pethor, which is near the river, in the land of the sons of his people, but to call him, saying, look, a people has come from Egypt. See, they cover the face of the earth and are settling next to me. Therefore, please come at once, curse these people for me, for they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I shall be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed. Just remember that last bit there. For he whom you bless is blessed, and for he whom you curse is cursed. Okay, just remember that. So they tried to enlist the services of Balaam. Now, this place, Pethor, was quite a distance from where they were living. So they got together, they got all these dignitaries, I suppose, to go out and seek out Balaam to see if he would be of service to them. Because he was an enchanter, and they thought that if they can get his service, they'll be able to put a curse on Israel, and they'll turn around and go home. Now, it's important to know, who was Balaam? Who was Balaam? Balaam was actually once a good man, a prophet of God, no less. And he was very sensitive to God, and he wanted to serve God, but he had a problem. He had a problem. That problem was money. Money and covetousness. The love of money just got in his way. You know, just like the rich young ruler that we read about in Mark 10, he could not let go of the love of money. Balaam spoke prophecies of truth, but it was neutralized by his love of money. Okay. So Balak sends an envoy to commission Balaam to come under his service, and in so doing, he will be richly rewarded. Now, Balaam, he should have known better. Well, he knew. Did Balaam know who God was? He knew exactly who God was. He knew who Jehovah was. And as soon as he found out what they were trying to do, he should have said, listen, turn around, get out of here, I want nothing to do with you. We can't go against the Most High God. But he doesn't do that. 2 John 1, 10 and 11. Oh, I missed one, did I? 2 John 1, 10 and 11. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this doctrine, do not receive him into your house, nor greet him, for he who greets him shares in his evil deeds. So as soon as he heard what he heard from them, he should have just kicked them out. But he didn't do that. Why didn't he do that? Because Balaam was a prophet. He certainly was. Now, a true prophet of God would never ask for money. You remember the story of Elisha and Naaman? Right? Naaman, what was his problem? What did he have? He had leprosy. And some young little Israeli girl told him about this amazing prophet who could heal him. So he goes to seek him with a whole heap of money, a big reward with him. And when Elisha healed him, God healed him through Elisha, what did Elisha do? Did he accept the money? He did not. He said, no, I will not accept this reward. It was a gift from God. Be blessed. When Daniel revealed to King Nebuchadnezzar the dreams, did he ask for a reward? He did not. He did not ask for a reward. No. Balaam knew that it was his duty to refuse the offer and to dismiss their request, but greed got in the way, got the better of him, and urged by these messengers to wait for him that night, he asked counsel from God. And you know what was interesting? Balaam knew that he wasn't going to be able to succeed. He knew that he couldn't curse these people, especially if they were being true to God. There was nothing that was going to get in their way. But pride, and the flattery of the messengers, remember what I said? Whom you bless is blessed, and whom you curse is cursed. The bribe of wealth and the flattery excited him. And he felt that, maybe I can do something here. Maybe God will work with me. So Balaam tells these guys that he's going to pray about it and hope to persuade that God will allow him to curse Israel so he can get that honor and that reward that he so wanted. Numbers 22, 9 to 13 says, Then God came to Balaam and said, Who are these men with you? So Balaam said to God, Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, has sent me, saying, Look, a people has come out of Egypt, and they cover the face of the earth. Come now, curse them for me. Perhaps I shall be able to overpower them and drive them out. And God said to Balaam, now listen, you shall not go with them. You shall not curse the people, for they are blessed. You shall not go with them. You shall not curse these people, for they are blessed. Can God be any more clearer than that? Can't be any more clearer than that. Can't go. So Balaam rose, verse 13, so Balaam rose in the morning and said to the princes of Balak, Go back to your land, for the Lord has refused to give me permission to go with him. Now I just want you to envision this. Remember, Balaam wanted the reward, and God said no. You know what it's like? It's like a little kid who wants to play with his friends, and his mum and dad say, you can't play with them. So he goes and tells his friends, I'm not allowed to come play with you. Mum and dad won't let me go. Balaam, God said I can't come with you. I want to come, but I'm not allowed. Why? He wanted the reward. It's pathetic, isn't it, really? But there he was. The temptation for Balaam It was incredible. So he tells them to go home. So on the way home, they go home. And you read from verse 14 to 17. And the princes of Moab rose and went back to Balak and said, Balaam refuses to come with us. Then Balak again sent princes, more numerous and more honourable than they. And they came to Balaam and said to him, Thus says Balak the son of Zippor, Please let nothing hinder you from coming to me, for I will certainly honour you greatly, and I will do whatever you say. Therefore, please come, curse these people for me. Balak, I think, he actually thought that Balaam was playing a game with him to see if he can put the price up a little bit. And you can see the desperation here in Balak, that he really needed Balaam to come along and curse these people. So what does he do? He sends a larger envoy with more dignitaries and a bigger pay. But Balak doesn't give up. Balaam doesn't take no for an answer. And on his way he goes. Now when they got there and they made the offer to Balaam, the temptation for Balaam would have been unbearable. Remember who he was, a prophet for profit. So with that, Balaam says, let me just ask God. You never know, he may have changed his mind. Maybe God will do this for me. You think God's going to do it for him? God was very clear. You know what it's like? Let me read you a little story. It's quite funny actually. It's like the man struggling with his weight. Every day on the way to work, he gets donuts. And one day he says, well, look, I'm not going to stop for donuts today unless there's an empty spot in front of the donut shop because they're always full. He knows that the parking spot is always full in front of the donut shop. And he says, I'll just pray about it. And if I'm supposed to get a donut, then there will be an empty parking spot there for me. So he shows up for work with some donuts. And his workmates say, hey, I thought you were going to give up eating donuts. Well, you know what? I kind of prayed about it and said to God, if there's going to be a parking spot in front of the donut shop, then it was meant for me to have a donut. And what do you know? There was an empty parking spot. Of course, I had to drive around the block 10 times, but eventually found one. I guess it must have been God's will. You know, this is it's quite humorous. It's just an illustration to help us highlight something that we all do. Have we been guilty of that in some sort of way? Sometimes we play games with God. We convince ourselves that maybe God might let some of this kind of sin happen for me because it's what I want. We'll try it twice and 3 times, but yeah, it doesn't always work out for us. And Balaam was willing to do wrong if the price was right. That's what he was banking on. So Balaam goes back to the Lord and asks him what to do. Well, we already know what he told him to do, but he didn't like the answer, so he keeps asking. Verse 20 and 21. And God came to Balaam at night and said to him, If the men come to call you, rise and go with them, but only the word which I speak to you, that you shall do. So Balaam rose in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab. That was interesting. So God gives permission here. Gives permission to go. It seems to be a bit of a conflict here. But I guess there's more to the story, and we'll read on. Now, this next section, verse 22 to 33, I'm not going to read it, but this is the story where Balaam jumps on his donkey and he's on the path on the way to see Balak. And on the way, what happens? The donkey just stops. Just stops there. And not only that, I think he hurts Balaam as well, but I think he was rearing backwards and his leg got caught up against a fence or something. And Balaam was furious. And Balaam, what did he do? He belted the living daylights out of the donkey. Now, I was speaking to James last week. He asked me what I was preaching on. And he says, are you going to mention the donkey part? I said, yeah. He says, make sure that you tell them that the donkey really got a huge flogging. Not once, not twice, 3 times. You want to emphasize that. So this poor creature, he could see that there's an angel in his path with a sword. Balaam couldn't see it. So in effect, the donkey saved Balaam. Let's read verse 28 to 30. Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, What have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times? And Balaam said to the donkey, Because you have abused me, I wish there were a sword in my hand, for now I would kill you. So the donkey said to Balaam, am I not your donkey on which you have ridden ever since I became yours to this day? Was I ever disposed to do this to you? And he said, no. Wow, that's fascinating, isn't it? God opens the donkey's mouth to talk. Amazing, right? You know what's just as fascinating? That Balaam talks back to the donkey and thinks there's nothing wrong with it. Well, that was pretty funny. Why? Why do you think God opened the donkey's mouth? What was he trying to do here? You know what? I don't know, I could be wrong, but I think that maybe Balaam thought that it was more important than what he actually was, that God could speak for him. But God said, you're not that special. You're not as special what you think you are. Look, I can even talk through a donkey, and at least he listens to me. You don't. Balaam was so distracted. He was losing it. He wasn't thinking right. If you'd seen an angel of the Lord on your path with a sword in its hand and saying, you know, turn around, what would you do? Turn around. I would hope so. But he was so distracted with the reward that he just kept marching through. And on he goes. Verse 34, the later part of verse 34. If it displeases you, I will turn back. If it displeases you. Of course it displeases God. Why can't he see that? God says to Balaam, all right, you want to go? Go. Go right ahead. But you're not going to be able to curse these people. You're going to say what I tell you to say. And I guess maybe he must have been happy with that. So finally arrives in Moab and is with Balak. So they get together and devise this plan of how to curse the children of Israel. So Balak said to Balaam, let's go up a very high point over there, and from there we'll build some altars, do some sacrifices, and we'll place a curse on them. So here it seems like they're doing everything according to, as if they believe in God, but at the same time asking God to do something completely contrary to his will. Chapter 23, Numbers 23, 7 to 10, we read how Balaam takes this oracle, this blessing that was supposed to, this curse that was supposed to curse the Israelites, and rather than placing a curse on them, he blesses them. In particular, verse 8, it says, how shall I curse whom God has not cursed? And it goes on with the blessing. And in the end, in Numbers 23, verse 11 to 12, 11 and 12 I've got here. Then Balak said to Balaam, what have you done to me? I took you to curse my enemies, and look, you have blessed them, and blessed them bountifully. So he answered and said, must I not take heed to speak what the Lord has put in my mouth? So now at this point, Balaam, you can see what's happened. He wasn't going to be able to curse the Israelites. So he should have said to Balak right there and then, listen, it's not going to work out. Let's just turn around and just give it away. Let's just end this now. But no. He goes along. He goes along with Balak saying, yeah, maybe we can curse them again. So Balak's thinking, maybe we can take him to a different vantage point, take Balaam to a different vantage point, and curse the children of Israel from there, as if that was going to make a difference. Now, again, instead of a curse, another blessing was pronounced. Now, I want you to look in particular at verse 21 and 22. Because we get a bit of an idea as to why Balaam wasn't able to curse the Israelites. Now, just read and follow carefully. It says here, verse 21, he has not observed iniquity in Jacob, nor has he seen wickedness in Israel. The Lord his God is with him, and the shout of the king is among them. God brings them out of Egypt. He has strength like a wild ox. The people of Israel at this time, you need to remember, were walking with God. Were they always walking with God? They weren't always obedient. But in this particular time in their history, they were obeying God. They were walking with God. And they were doing all the right things. And nothing could hurt them. Nothing at all could hurt them out there. When you are in God's will, now this is for you and for me, when you are in God's will, you and the Lord are always the majority. You believe that? When you are in God's will, you and the Lord are always the majority. You have nothing to fear. Our biggest fear, our only fear, is that we step out of His will. If we are living in harmony, we have nothing to fear. You are blessed. Do you believe that? You're all blessed. You're God's children. Verse 23. For there is no sorcery against Jacob, nor any divination against Israel. Do you have to worry, while you're a Christian and you're in God's will, do you have to worry about anyone out there who might worship the devil, who wants to put a curse on you? Do you have to worry about them? You don't have to worry about them. Do you have to worry about anyone who does voodoo, makes a little doll of you and pricks it with little pins? Do you have to worry about any of that? You don't have to worry about any of that. Do you have to worry about walking under a ladder? Do you have to worry about a black cat crossing your path? Do you have to worry about breaking a mirror? Apparently 7 years bad luck. You don't have to worry about any of that nonsense. There is no sorcery that can hurt you. It doesn't matter what the zodiac sign says for the day. I hope none of you guys read the zodiac. Silly. If you do, you don't have to be afraid. And that's key. You don't have to be afraid. If, it's only a 2-letter word, but it's significant. If you are serving God, all that stuff is completely neutralized. It is totally ineffective. And that's good news. Okay, let's get back to the story. Now, it's obvious that Israel is blessed. And Balak now is furious with Balaam. Chapter 23, 25 and 26. Then Balak said to Balaam, neither curse them at all, nor bless them at all. So Balaam answered and said to Balak, I told you, didn't I tell you, saying that all that the Lord speaks, that I must do? Now you'd think by this time, Balak would have got the message. But no, he goes again. That's what you call dumb desperation. If you want to determine dumb desperation, you have it right there. So from chapter 23, verse 27, all the way to chapter 24, verse 24, Balaam and Balak attempt again to curse the Israelites a third and a fourth time, until finally, verse 25, so Balaam rose and departed and returned to his place. Balak also went his way. It seems like they finally got the message. So Balak basically said, you might as well go home. It's pointless having you around here anyway. And by the way, you're not getting the reward. You haven't done anything for me here. So Balaam, on his way he goes. On his way home, he'd have been really upset. Remember, the whole idea behind him going was for the reward. And he wasn't going to get it. And the king was upset with him. And he wanted that reward so much. Well, so after this failed venture, you think that's it. There's nothing that's going to stop the Israelites from walking or marching through to the promised land, right? They tried their best. No curse was going to stop the Israelites. Well, so you'd think, but let's go to chapter 25, verses 1 and 2. Now, Israel remained in Acacia Grove, and the people began to commit harlotry with the women of Moab. They invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. What happened here? Didn't I just finish telling you that they're walking with the Lord? There was nothing that was going to get in their way. And here we find that they're fraternizing with the enemy, worshipping their gods. And in turn, what happens? As we continue, we'll find out that there's a deadly plague that sweeps through the camp. 5 and 6, chapter 25. Moses said to the judges of Israel, every one of you kill his men who were joined to Baal of Peor. And indeed, one of the children of Israel came and presented to his brethren a Midianite woman in the sight of Moses and in the sight of the congregation of the children of Israel, who were weeping at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. How could this have happened? How did these Israelites come to be in this position? You know what it goes back to? It all goes back to Balaam and his desire for that reward. He wanted that reward so bad. But it's funny because between Numbers chapter 24 and 25, we don't get much of an account of that happening. But there is a clue, pretty solid clue in Revelation 2:14, where it says, "But I have a few things against you, because you have there those who hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to put a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols, and to commit sexual immorality." There you go. Psalm 106:28. "They joined themselves also to Baal of Peor and ate sacrifices made to the dead." You see, when Balaam was going home, all he can think about was the reward. All he can think about is that money that he missed out on, and going home and having his reputation in tatters as a failure, to be known as. His reputation was on the line. So he had to find some way to appease Balak. He had to think of something that would appease Balak. His reputation was on the line. And don't forget that reward. He still wanted that reward. What was he going to do? So on his way home, he came up with an idea. Of course, what did I think of this before? I said, I know what to do. The reason why God is blessing Israel is because there's no sin in them. There is no iniquity in Israel. If I can get Israel just to break God's law, then I know that protection will be withdrawn, and then they can be cursed. Then we have a plan that we can work with. Sounds like a pretty good plan. Pretty brilliant, really. Brilliant plan. So he turns around, he does a U-turn on his donkey, he goes back to Balak and says, "Hey, listen, I've got a plan. It's brilliant. Have a listen. If you want to bring down the Israelites, sorcery is not going to do it. We tried that. It didn't work. They are protected because they obey their God. God has put a hedge around them because they obey. As long as they are obeying God, we can't touch them. Nothing can be done unless God removes this hedge of protection. If you can get them to sin, that'll drive those angels away. And that protection is gone. Then there will be a curse on them. And here is what we need to do. Come here. And it's the oldest sin in the world. And it's the same sin that put Samson, David, and Solomon in trouble. Balaam says to Balak, here is a plan that never fails, never seems to fail. You get the most beautiful women in your land. Get them and send them amongst the men to entice them and get them involved in worshipping other gods, and their God will withdraw from them and their protection is gone and they will be cursed. That's exactly what they did. And you know what? It worked. It worked the treat. Balaam was able to accomplish through women what he couldn't accomplish through sorcery. Sexual immorality and paganism is what the devil used to bring down God's people, and it's no different today. It really isn't. It's no different today. What worked for the devil then still works today. Actually, I might even go as far to say that it's probably worse now. The devil's had thousands of years' experience since that time to do things to upset our routine with God. We have the internet, we have TV, we have music, we have novels, we have sport, we have love for money, work. I mean, the list is endless. Now, just to prove this point, I have a little short clip that I want you guys to see. It goes for about 2.5 minutes. Now, the clip is from presented by a fellow called Scott Ritzema. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of him. He is from Belt of Truth Ministries, and it's from a DVD called Media on the Brain. If I can just get Neuron to play that for us, hopefully it works. Is it good to go? Okay.
But I want to close again with a story. I was having a conversation with a pastor who happens to be ministering in the Hispanic community. And he came across a practicing witch. And I was just having a conversation with the witch, and he said, what do you do for a living? How do you make ends meet? And the guy said, well, actually, people pay me money to be able to get a woman to go with them. So in other words, man A pays me money to get the woman to leave man B and go with man A. Wow. So you can just, cast a spell? He says, yeah, I cast spells, and I can get a woman to leave her husband and go with this man who paid me money. And I could do that with anyone. I could do that with your wife. I could get her to leave you and go with another man. Well, at this point, the pastor says, I don't think you can do that with my family because we're Christians. Well, at this point, the witch says, I get Christians all the time. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not. And this pastor again says, well, I'm telling you, you would not be able to touch my family. The witch says, okay, let me ask you a few questions. I'll entertain this. He says, do you watch TV and worldly things, soap operas, these kinds of things, and movies? Do you listen to worldly music? I don't think he used the word worldly, but do you listen to music? The pastor says, well, we sometimes listen to classical music, but mostly just sacred music. And he said, no, I'm not talking about classical. I'm talking about the jazz and the country and these kinds of music. And he said, no, we don't listen to those things. Do you have worldly magazines? Do you have novels? Do you have these kinds of things in your home? No, we don't. Do you have any secret sins? No, I've been saved by Jesus Christ. From time to time I slip up, but no, I'm not living in open rebellion in a secret way in my life. I don't have any secret sins. And the witch says, okay, well, I have to acknowledge I would not be able to touch you. I would not be able to get your wife to cheat on you. I would have no power over you. What's the lesson here? The lesson here is if we allow these things into our homes and into our lives, the spiritual realm can make claims upon us based upon what we invite into our lives. We say, I'm not going to let the devil in the front door. I'm going to go to the church. I'll go to church. I'm not going to have Aleister Crowley and study him, but I'm going to let...
Okay, that's enough. So, you see the parallel there between what he was saying there and what happened here with Balaam? Remember, Balak was trying to get his Balaam's services, to curse the children of Israel, and they couldn't do it. The story here that Scott presents, talking about this pastor that says, you're not going to be able to curse me. Now, firstly, do you guys believe that there are witches out there? I don't want to dwell too much on it. There are witches out there. They can do these things. I believe they can. But did you notice where he said, I'm able to curse these people and they'll do this and that. This wife go with that guy. Right? That was his living. And do you notice that he said that he could do it on Christians? No problems. Until the pastor said, you wouldn't be able to do it on my family because, why? Because he wasn't involving himself in any of that stuff that he mentioned. Movies, rock music, novels, a whole host of things. Now, I don't know about you, but I struggle with some of those things. I dare say probably some of you too, you do as well. Now, I don't want to dwell too much on that. I just wanted to put it out there a little bit, just a little bit of food for thought, just to let you know that the devil, what does the Bible say about the devil? He's like a roaring lion. He's ready to devour. He's looking for a weak spot. He knows your weaknesses. We need to be in tune with God. If we want God's blessing and protection, we need to be faithful. If we want God to lead us to the promised land, then we need to keep our eyes on Jesus. It's as simple as that. Oops. Chapter 25, verse 7. Let's finish this off. Now when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, saw it, he rose from among the congregation and took a javelin in his hand. And he went after the man of Israel into the tent and thrust both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman through her body. So the plague was stopped among the children of Israel. And those who died in the plague were 24,000 people. That's huge. The plague was stopped, but not before 24,000 people died. That's what you call a disaster. But you know what? Balaam and Balak had a little victory there. They won a little battle there, but in the end, the last laugh was on them. If you were to read Numbers 31, you'd find out that the Israelites go into a battle after the plague had stopped, and they killed the Moabite people, the Midians, and Balaam. Balaam There was a prophet for prophet who wanted the money. In the end, what happened? He died. And after a major hiccup, the Israelites were given the promised land. Balaam ran after the reward, a mad prophet who misapplied his gift. Was it worth it? Matthew 16. Oops, one. Must have missed it. Anyway, Matthew 16:26 says, "For what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul?" A man's life does not consist in the abundance of the things that he has. The important thing is God's kingdom. Invest in eternity. Something that lasts forever. That's where the motivation for living needs to be. That's where we need to be. Now, Israel crossed the Jordan River and went into the promised land. And God is willing to lead us into the promised land, but we need to be willing to follow him all the way. We need to be following all the way. We need to be holding Jesus' hand all the way through this journey called life. We need to surrender our will to him. God loves us, and God wants us to be homebound. Eternity. Let's not give it away. That's my sermon today. Let's sing our last hymn today, which is hymn number 516. All the way my Saviour leads me.